So I'm Clément from Vegan Skills, and as you probably know, we probably share every stages of our maker's process on our website, and that's what we want to share about. Telling you more about the products that you buy and all the amazing stories behind it. So we thought we'd use Instagram to talk to you and to talk to our makers and have a conversation, ask a few questions. And if you want to ask questions, then please feel free to do so. So let me just see how now. There we go. I'm going to get...
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you, Katie?
How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much.
Good. Absolute pleasure. I'm in my workshop where my internet's not very good, so please tell me if it's not working very well, and I'll go back downstairs where my internet's a little bit better.
It works for me and it looks good, so that's great. How are
Perfect. Well done for your technical issues. Congratulations.
Yes.
Coming live.
Delay because couldn't find the live button.
That's all right. I went live for the first time a couple of weeks ago. It was really scary. I had no idea I was going to do it. I just pressed the live button and then realized I actually spent the first 5 minutes talking to myself whilst I was live on Instagram without realizing I was.
I'm not scared at all.
Good. Congratulations. We'll be fine. Don't worry.
Okay. Great. So, having you on board at Vegan Skills, Katy, is amazing. Your products are beautiful. And so very excited to start this Instagram Live for the first time with you. I just wanted to ask you, how you came about to become a leather worker and your story a little bit, how it started, how you all started.
Yeah, of course. Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me to the Vigor and Skills family. It was really humbling to get your message a good few months ago when you invited me, and then to have you come to my workshop as well. Was really wonderful to have that film made, and it's just lovely to be a part of that community. It was a lovely experience. Thank you. So my leatherworking started out, actually it started as a dream when I was a little girl. I was a professional horse rider for the beginning part of my life. And I always said I wanted to make saddles and bridles for the film industry. Fast forward many years, lots of traveling around the world, lots of sex, drugs and rock and roll, and a wonderful time of just having fun. And I got to about 30 and I decided it was time to really pursue this dream that I wanted in my life. And I went on a 2-day leatherworking course, and I treated myself for my 30th birthday. And I finally touched this material, this fiber, and I started working with it, and I realized that this is exactly what I wanted to do. I've worked with leather for years and years. Being a horse rider, leather's a huge part of my life. And but finally I got the tools and I got some leather, and I did this 2-day workshop, and it was absolutely incredible. And I went away thereafter, and I devoted, well, what is now the next 7 years of my life to learning this craft. I've got endless books, endless videos online, and lots of tutorials, and I have made my fingers bleed for years and years to learn my craft as best I can. It's an incredible material, fiber. I class it as a fiber. I know some don't.
Is it something you wanted to do a long time before?
Yeah, I think I wanted to be a saddler from the age of about 12 years old, and that was what I really wanted to do. And then I wanted to be a bootmaker, and I didn't really know which path to go down, so it was either bootmaking or saddlery. But I've really decided that saddlery is what I want to do, and in July this year I'm starting my saddlery training. Amazing. My 10-year plan is to be a master of my craft. I really want to work to that. I've spent my whole life being a jack of all and a master of none, and I would love to say that I am a master of something. That would be really powerful to me.
Yes. And so I know that you have sustainability is a big part of what you do, and could you tell us a little bit about how important is this for you, and what is it that happened in your craft?
So sustainability is a really interesting word, actually. I try my hardest to not use the word sustainability. Instead, I use the word responsibility. Um, Sustainability and leather are two really difficult words to put together. And I think actually sustainability in any aspect is a really difficult word to use. There are so many elements involved that you have to pay attention to and make sure is correct to be able to use the word sustainable. So I think with leather, we're not there yet, but we're getting there. And I think instead I like to use the word responsibility. I have a responsibility to the material that I use, the animal that it came from, because you know that it comes from a cow or a sheep or a pig, and at some point they had to have died to have created the material we're using. There's also a farmer that comes along with that practice as well, and then the tanning practices, the abattoir, how they get from said abattoir to tannery, and then the merchants that are buying those hides to be able to sell to us. I buy direct from the tannery itself. But there are so many processes involved in this. This is why I try and stay away from the word sustainable, but instead go to the word responsible. So I've spent years of my life now researching traceable leather, provenance of leather, where my materials come from. I have a degree in marine and environmental law, marine science and environmental law. So I really enjoy the science research aspect of this. And it's been an incredible journey. Quite scary in places when you start to open the door and start asking questions about where your materials come from. Sometimes you really wish you hadn't opened that door. It's quite a daunting world, and you can never close the door behind you, and you suddenly open up this rabbit hole and you fall down it, and you start to really realize some of the scary things that happen around the world about where our materials come from, the environmental factors that come along with it, the human welfare that comes along with it, or should I say the lack of environmental welfare and the lack of human welfare. And you really start to see, maybe in a way where we've gone a bit wrong in the last 100 years of human life, and how it's all gone a bit too much. I'm really passionate about provenance. The reason why I exclusively use the leather from the tannery that I go to. So I use J&F Baker's leather.
Sorry, can you tell us about your tannery? I know this is quite important. It's quite unique also, the way they process the leather.
So the tannery is called J&F Bakers. They're based in Devon, about 40 minutes from my home. I'm very lucky, and I'm sure any other leather worker that's watching this right now will say I'm very lucky to live so close to them. They're the last remaining oak bark tannery in Europe. Up until about 50 or 60 years ago, this country was built on industry, but for the last 50, 60 years, we've lost industry in this country. Tanneries were a huge part of our industry, and about 50 years ago, I think Devon alone had about 150 tanneries. We now have 2, and that's it. So J&F Bakers is the last remaining oak bark tannery. They source their oak bark from Britain. They source their hides from Exeter Abattoir. Local is very important to them. They're still a family-run business. I believe the tannery site's been there for about 300 or 400 years, but the actual site, that's the buildings. I believe the site itself has been there for, I believe, since Roman times, which is incredible. So this really dates back a good few thousand years. So there's an ancientness and an oldness to this leather. Oak bark tanning creates an incredibly durable leather. It is very long lasting. It's quite stiff in its in the way that it moves and the way that it bends. Its fibers are really closely locked together.
Very thick. Or something. I'm not expert in it, but I find it beautiful, beautiful leather. You know, you made me a beautiful belt.
Yeah.
Amazing. The quality of this leather is unbelievable. And
it's amazing. It's used all over the world. It's also used in shoe sole leather as well. I've got some here in my trunk, but it'll I should have brought some props with me to show on this live. But it's shipped all over the world. It's actually shipped quite a lot to Japan. A lot of Japanese leather workers use it for its aesthetic and its durability as well. It's an incredible leather. Once you start using this leather, it's really hard to be able to walk away from it. And the fact that it comes from Britain, the fact that I can trace the animals back to at least to abattoir. I can't yet trace them back to field, but we're working on this. And there's a few of us around this country that are really passionate about where our leather comes from. And we're shouting quite loudly about trying to create really really good provenance and traceability with the materials that we're using.
Ah.
Involved in that as well, it's not just the leather, but it's also the hardware. So the brass buckles and the copper saddler's rivets that I use come from a small family-run foundry in Walsall. The linen thread that I use doesn't come from, it's produced in this country, but it doesn't come from this country. We haven't actually grown flax in this country since about 1890. We grow linseed, but we don't grow flax. So we have no linen production in this company, in this country.
Do you believe all this will change? I mean, is it evolving, or is it, you know, say otherwise? Like, is it scary? What do you think?
I think the last year, this mad zombie apocalypse has really opened everybody's eyes to a lot of things. And I think food is the starting point. People are really starting to question where the food comes from. And I think from this, people are now starting to filter down to the idea of where their clothes come from, where their fashion comes from. The disconnect between food and farming is huge. And people understand it when I say that. But if I said to you, there's a disconnect between fashion and farming, most people sort of look at me and go, what do you mean fashion and farming? Well, where does cotton come from? Where does hemp come from? Where does flax come from? Where does leather come from? It all comes from the soil in the ground. And so farming plays a huge part in fashion. At least at the moment, it plays a very small part in fashion, because most of the fashion that we wear is plastic. It comes from poly fibers. Yeah. So I think there's a huge movement, at least a huge conversation starting. The vibrations are really becoming quite big at the moment, and conversations are becoming quite huge. People are starting to realize all over the world that the fashion industry plays a huge part in the destruction of what's happening around the world at the moment. And it's amazing, the conversations that are starting. So leather is what I create in my world, is fashion accessories. I create belts and I create bags. There are parts of that are towards gardening as well. I create secateurs holders and gardening trugs, but in the grand scheme of things, they're fashion accessories. And I have to say that I am part of the fashion world. Although to look at me, you wouldn't think that. Most of my clothes come from charity shops and are full of holes, but but I do play a part in the fashion world. So I have to start this conversation too. And I'm so passionate about having these conversations. So I think back to your sort of sustainability question, I have a huge responsibility to myself, to the world around me, and to my customers and my clients to start these conversations, to be able to go to, it's not hard to pick up the phone and speak to your suppliers and find out where things come from. And quite often your suppliers have no idea where things come from. And then you start this conversation, and then the ball starts rolling, and those people start asking questions, and those people start asking questions. And hopefully before you know it, you've created this huge, massive ball that's rolling down the hill, and we'll make some good at the end of it, which will be really exciting.
Where we are now, it you know, it costs quite some money to have all this also. What do you say to people that say that buying handmade is too expensive? What do you say? What selling sort of arguments? Or no, it's not that, you know, not just selling arguments. What argument do you?
Well, I mean, honestly, I can't afford my bags. It's buying handmade is expensive. There is no lie about that. It's not available to everybody, and I think that, again, that is a huge part of a huge problem at the moment. It's not available to everybody at all. But I think I said this to you the other day, and it's a really good, I can't take the credit for this one, but I can't remember who said it. At what point did it become okay to go to Primark and buy a jumper for the same cost as a pint?
Yes.
And that, I think, is really important and a really powerful thing to take forward. So I'm not saying that my bags are only a few more pence than a pint. They're a bit more few pence than a pint. But to turn around and say that actually, instead of just going and buying that one jumper from Primark, what have you got in your house, that in your wardrobe, that you don't need that jumper right now? You know, you can go and find something else, or you can save up your pennies and buy something that's going to last you much longer. The materials come from probably a much more ethical place, in not just environmental standards, but human welfare standards too. It's made much more lovingly. It comes from a face. You know, so many of the products that we buy today come off a shelf, and there's no face that comes along with it. Whereas when you buy from somebody that is a hand maker or a hand crafter, somebody like myself or the other wonderful people that you've got on your website, or the thousands of people all over Instagram and social media and this great craft movement that's happening at the moment, it comes from a face. You start a conversation with those people, you start this incredible journey and friendship, and there's a loyalty that comes along with it as well. And that's not something that you can buy on the high street anymore, I don't think.
Yeah.
And that, I think that also justifies the price tag as well. There's, you know, when you start a journey with someone and a friendship and you create a family, that's a huge part of the justification of a price tag too, I think.
You tend to, I mean, it's better buying once, maybe more expensive than buying 2 or 3 times in your lifetime, cheaper, where you, or things like this. So it's a very interesting point. So, so I mean, we've covered a bit about the sustainable, you know, the responsibility that you like it. But so let's talk about your craft really. Well, I was interested to ask you where you get inspiration for your designs and for your creations.
I think I'm inspired by oldness. I'm inspired by elegance, and I'm inspired by, I don't know, timeless is the wrong word to put into that. I like to make things that are a bit timeless. So I think that I'm inspired by things that are old, that need to be able to work in a modern society. There's a lot of elements of old traditional saddlery techniques in my work. I think that you could probably walk down the street 100 years ago with one of my bags and it would look just as in place as if you walk down the street with it today. I take a lot of inspiration from the world around me. God, that sounds really corny, doesn't it? And I also take quite a lot of inspiration from some of the things that I have seen throughout my life. So I remember a bag that my mum had years and years and years ago that really inspired quite a lot of the designs that I bring forward now. And yeah, there was a bit of an oldness to those sorts of things. I think simplicity is really important to me. Making things that are just really simple, traditional, practical and durable, but have an elegance to them as well.
I mean, I know where you live in Devon. I've been to your shop, and you are surrounded by such a beautiful nature. Does it have an effect, you think, about, you know, you things a certain way? Maybe does that relate?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. Going out for a walk on certain days up on the moor when there's just nothingness around you, and can really open your mind up to being able to be quite inspired on a creative level. Do you know, I never thought I was creative. I can't even draw a stick man. I'm rubbish with a pencil in my hand. And then, so I never thought that I was artistic or creative. About 10 years ago, I started working on creative teams at festivals and building amazing things in temporary events on creative crews. And then I moved into the world of film and TV and started as a prop maker. And I suddenly realized I was actually quite creative. I didn't really know where this creative flair came from. But I think, yeah, I do draw quite a lot from the world around me and the natural world around me as well. Whether that actually shows in my work or not, I'm not really sure. I like to think that it does.
How much do you think you've evolved as a person since you're starting working as a leather worker?
Hugely. Especially when you start your own business, you suddenly go from feeling like a child to a proper grown-up. I think there are 2 answers to that. As a leather worker, I've grown massively. I've realized from what I said before about how much creativity I actually have in my bones. As a small business owner, I've grown far too fast and I've got far too many grey hairs because of it. Running a business is a really daunting thing to do. It's given me a lot of drive. It's given me a lot of passion. It's made me really see where I want to find my feet in this world and how I want to be able to go forward. And that's not just as a business owner. That's not just being able to keep a roof over my head with the business that I've got, but that's also the passion that I have got to try and make a difference in the world of leather. This is going to sound really awful, but I really want to know that when I get to my deathbed, I can look back and say that I made a difference in this world. And that's why I try and do as much as I can do with traceability of leather, and also just trying to help close the gap between the world of farming and fashion in my specific area, which is leather.
So, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to change their shopping habits and to shop better, you know, to try to be more aware and be more you know, with a sustainable sort of mind and everything? What tips would you have?
Don't go and buy a Louis Vuitton bag, buy one of mine instead. So it's really egotistical, isn't it? I'm liking myself to Louis Vuitton now. Sorry. I think try as hard as you can to stay away from the big high street fashion brands.
Yeah.
That's easier said than done. God, I've gone into Primark. I went in there a few years ago. I bought something off Amazon yesterday. Christ, I'm guilty. I can preach till the cows come home, pun intended. But I still do it. I think we're all guilty of it. Just lessen it.
It's a process. I think we can't, you know, stop everything we're doing the way we've always, you know, learned how to do it. We probably need to be more aware. Having Amazon, it's okay, but try to think of shopping elsewhere first, maybe, instead of going straight to the application.
You know, it's so easy, isn't it? I'm 36, and I'm really grateful that I feel I'm kind of the last generation that remembers what it was like without a telephone in my hand. I remember what it was like to, you know, if you wanted to go off and cause trouble, you went off, you cycled or walked off to your mate's house, and you didn't have a telephone to call them to see if they were in or not. And if they weren't in, you went off and caused trouble somewhere else anyway. But now, and again, I'm also guilty of this. I have a telephone in my back pocket constantly. If I want something, it's right there at the click of a finger, be that an item of clothing or something that I need that's materialistic or information. It's right there. And
difficult to ignore.
It's so hard to ignore. And to be able to change our habits is really difficult. I think, again, we had this conversation recently about the change between government and big business or individuals. And I think maybe I challenge the status quo a little bit when I say this. I don't believe that it's government and big business that needs to change at all. I think it's individuals that need to change. Because actually, if you break it down, government and big business are also individuals. A government is not just one thing. It's run by a group of individuals. And if each of us individuals make choices that are different in this world and make conscious choices of, I love that saying, buy less, choose well, then actually it's the responsibility of us individuals that have to change. And if we all just sit on our laurels and wait for government and big business to change, there's not really much hope for any of us. So we've got the ability at the finger of our finger. Again, I said this to you the other day. I say all of this quite from a preaching point of view. I am very much a white woman that is brought up in the southwest of England, obviously from a middle-class background. As I said, I haven't got a single penny in my bank account, but I come from a middle-class background, and I happily put my hand in the air, and I admit that. So maybe I am preaching to the wrong people when I say this, or maybe I'm preaching to the right people. I know I can make those choices in my life, and I know that there are so many people in this world that don't have the ability to make those choices or to be able to change. And I think it's then our responsibility to try and gently push education towards those people to try and make those choices as well. And if we have the ability to make those choices, there's a lot of me in the world. There's a lot of other people like me in the world. So let's try as hard as we can to make those choices and make better choices. I think that sounds about right.
It does. Just last question, quick question. What is the best advice you've ever received? This is a question for.
Do you know what, actually, I'm going to read you a quote from an incredible friend of mine who passed away last year. My amazing friend, Kate Downs. She was 30 years old and she died of a brain tumor last year. She was studying for a PhD, and Kate was going to change the world. She was wholeheartedly going to change this world for the better. And she said a few days before she died that life is short, let the small things go and live your absolute and best life. And I think that
that's a beautiful that's beautiful.
Yeah. So I dedicate this to my incredible friend Kate, because she was an amazing woman, and yeah, I don't want to say that she was taken away from this world too early, because hey, we don't have much choice over death, so it just happens. But she was an amazing woman, and I think holding on to those things, and you know, you don't really pay attention to things until they're gone from you. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to suddenly look at that and go, actually, I'm going to learn from her words. Good for her.
Beautiful.
May she rest in peace for all the amazing things that she's done in this world.
Beautiful way to end, I think, Katy.
Nearly shed a tear then.
That's, you know, anyway, thank you so much, Katy. Everyone, please go to the website, Vegan Skills. Check out Katy's shop. There is videos of her making a belt. You'll see all her beautiful products. Don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any requests, questions, or anything. And thank you again. I don't know where.
Thank you, and congratulations for your first ever live.
I know.
You've done it absolutely amazingly. Well done. You can go and have a nice strong gin now. It's all fine.
Take care.
Thank you so much to everybody that's joined as well. It's been really nice, and I apologize if I've gone down a preachy route of a bit of sort of preachy ramblings. This is just who I am, and I like to express myself this way.
For the first time, Katy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Lovely to see you again. Happy bank holiday weekend. Bye.
Bye.